What is up, awesome dads? Welcome to the Act Dad podcast. With me today, I have an awesome guest. I am really excited for this interview. He runs one of the best podcasts for fathers on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever your podcast can be found. He has interviewed some amazing guests on his podcast, everyone from Tony Hawk to Grant Cardone to Hall of Famers Deon Sanders, Kurt Warner. He has a special every Friday for Frogmen where he's interviewing Navy SEALs and getting deep into their psyche. So I am so proud to bring you father of four today, Mr. Alec Lace. What is up?
What's doing, Mark? Thank you so much for having me on here. This is an honor.
Oh man, I'm so excited to have you on, brother. I've been waiting for this. I'm bummed that we didn't get to do this last week because my voice just shot out from under me, man.
Yeah. Some of the job defects there.
Yes, yeah. It's hard to run a podcast or a video program when you got no voice. So I appreciate your patience.
I understand.
Yeah. So Alec, thank you so much for taking time to be here with me today. I've listened to several of your episodes, and it's some really compelling stuff. You interview some great, awesome people. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of that, I just want to dive a little bit deeper into your story. Right, you're a father of four, husband, married, living in New Jersey. So what do you love best about, well, let me start here. How did you become a father? How did that start?
Well, I was waiting for my refrigerator to get delivered out in front of my apartment building in Bayonne, New Jersey there. And this woman had come around the corner and stopped right in front of the stoop. And she was finishing her cigarette. I was having mine. And we just started talking. And we're married 14 years now. So that's really pretty much how we met. Just started from that one conversation. I asked her, there was a auto repair shop across the street. I thought maybe she was waiting for her tires to get fixed or whatever. So we just started shooting the breeze about that was in September. That December, we got engaged. That February, we got married out in Las Vegas, just the two of us. And we've been married now 14 years, 4 kids.
Awesome. Amazing, man. It's funny how things just bring us together. I met my wife at work. I was going in for an interview at Target. She was working at guest service, and 5 years later, we're married. We've been together about 12 years, been married 5. So we've got a 3-year-old daughter, and I got a son coming up to a maternity ward near you in just about a week. So
That's
exciting.
awesome. Yeah, congratulations.
Such a blessing, such a blessing. So your kid's a little bit older, right? You've got a nice mix up to, how old is your oldest?
Yeah, we just entered the fray here. We got a teenager in the house now. He just turned 13 over the last weekend. So 13, 11, 8, and 4. The girl came on the 4th try. If we didn't get her on 4, we'd have 5 by now.
There you go, brother. There you go. Man, there's something special about a baby girl, man. They're just something special. Does she really attach to you? Like, how's your relationship with her?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a totally different experience, and I definitely I would say like I discipline her a little bit differently than I do my boys. It's a totally different experience, and I love every minute of it. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be her father.
Yeah, no doubt. Discipline is one of the most challenging things for fathers because, man, there's nothing I hate more than having to penalize or discipline my daughter. But I think it's important at the same time that kids have some sort of structure and understand that there's positive, negative consequences for every decision we make in life. So tough road.
It's trying not to lead with my emotions is really the difficult part of all that. So I'm still learning, trying to get better at it every day here. So I'm a work in progress for sure.
No kidding, man. No kidding. So do you, out of curiosity, when you started this podcast, and I want to get into a little bit about that. Did you find that getting into this podcast and interviewing dads, has that helped you as a father, help you grow as a father, just being involved in the podcast like that?
Tremendously. More than I would have expected, just because like some of the guys that you have mentioned, they're very high quality, high caliber dads. They're just great men overall. I've always had like a fascination with the Navy SEALs. So that's why I've been so blessed to have so many of them on the show, just because of their mindset, not even just fatherhood, but just about life in general. I've picked up so much, not just from our on-air interviews, but just having relationships with these guys off the air and being able to communicate with them. And I'm just blown away by, the way that their philosophy is. It's really inspiring. So I think it's a benefit to our whole society that we have access to these guys now, that we can follow them on social media, that we can read their books, and I think it's just a great benefit to all of us.
Absolutely. I that's one of the things I love the most about the internet is it's kind of cut out the middleman, right? You don't have to just choose from 13 different channels on television. You have access to amazing people all over the world. So whoever you really want to be inspired and being, you can kind of write your own story and listen to the stories that you prefer. And so that's one of the things I really love about what you're doing. Quite frankly, there's a lot of dad podcasts out there. Let me rephrase that. There's not very many dad podcasts out there, and most of them are just not very good, quite frankly. And so I really appreciate that you've taken the effort to go out and find some of these really high performing fathers and businessmen and athletes and military personnel. That's really cool. So I would, before we get into the depth, because I definitely want to know about these guys some more. What made you decide to get into podcasts in the first place? Right? Because you've been doing it only about a year now.
Yeah, just passed a year. Yep. Yeah, it all started, Mark, about a year ago. My kids, it culminated because my daughter was watching YouTube, and one of these things where kids open packages, and it made no sense to me. I was like, why don't we try to make one of these instead of watching it? And my older two boys, they wanted to try to start a YouTube channel. So I was trying to explain to them, like, listen, you can't just turn the phone on, fool around, and then think you're going to post it and that's the end of it. You got to put some work into it, a little bit of effort. So I was trying to look into ways to start one up with them. And that's when I found out and discovered what podcasting was. I had no idea what it was. And I saw it was audio only. So I said, you know what, because I did a few with my daughter, like trying to have her open, and the lighting was a pain to deal with. And I was like, just doing the audio, it seems a little bit simpler. I didn't know really yet, but I said, you know what, let me try doing this podcast. I took out a couple of books from the library. I read it real quick. And everything was pointing to narrow it down to something that you're very familiar with, get into that little niche group that you're confident about speaking on. And so I said, all right, fatherhood's a no-brainer for me. I'll start there. And I just hit the button and started recording. I put the first couple episodes out there. And, within about a week or so, I started getting hit up from dads, saying that they liked the message. And basically, I drive Uber on the weekends. And if you hear me, I speak about this on the podcast quite often. And the narrative that the young guys have right now about fatherhood and about family life is this negative undertone that it's the end of the world if they get married. That's it. And they get a lot of that through our pop culture, because whenever we watch TV or in the movies, we see a single guy. He's always living it up. He's sleeping around. He's banging all kinds of women. He's enjoying his life. But we see a family guy's always got his head down. Life's kicking him in the ass, and he's never getting any action. And he's always throwing in the towel. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. And in order to say that myself, my word doesn't really carry much. But when you have guys on that have been Super Bowl MVPs, guys that have been SEAL Team 6 operators, guys that have made $500 million in their life, and when they come on and they say, you know what, despite all these accomplishments that I've had, it has been through the experience of fatherhood that has given me the most fulfillment and the most joy in my entire life. And that's a big testimony to what fatherhood is really all about.
I couldn't agree more, Alec. That's quite frankly what you just described, the way that culture and society looks at fatherhood in general is the exact reason that I started Act a Dad and the Awesome Dad movement. Because for whatever reason, I've thought about this a lot. Dads have just been marginalized to being just boring, doofuses, drunks, abusive, uninteresting. Like, how did that happen? I think about it because you look at all the sitcoms. Like, I think really, I bring it back all the way to The Simpsons when The Simpsons came out. And I don't have anything against The Simpsons. I thought it was a funny show. But the character of Homer was so successful that I believe that other people started copying it. And all of a sudden, that became the gold standard in dads is the Homer Simpson character. And what I think is important that you hit on is that there are so many fathers out there that are passionate about being awesome. There are so many great fathers doing amazing things. And we need to highlight them. We don't need to highlight the Homer Simpsons. Let's highlight the awesome dads. So that's what I really respect about what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And I had former Lieutenant Colonel Alan West on the show, and he pointed out too, which I thought was pretty good. We went from like the Mr. Brady from the Brady Bunch to that Al Bundy type character from Married with Children. Married with Children, great funny show, but it started that turn of where we're looking at fathers as that lazy guy who doesn't get involved in any aspect of the parenting. And you're right, we got to highlight the dads and what they're doing, because we're not babysitters. We're just as equally important to a child's life as the mother. Now, we don't have the same roles, obviously, But when you look at the stats of children that are, and we have a fatherless problem in our country right now, there's no doubt about it. And when you look at the statistics on this, the children that are growing up without fathers in the home, the rates on everything across the board skyrocket. Drug use, suicide, teenage incarceration, teenage pregnancy, all the all the categories, they're skyrocketing the numbers. And it's just a testimony to that fact that you need to have a father or a father figure in the life of a child. It's just as important.
I could not agree more, man. I could not agree more. And I know just as well as you do that there are millions of dads out there that feel that and know that and understand that. So it's why I really appreciate podcasts like First Class Fatherhood being out there to help dads know that you're not alone, right? You're not alone. You don't have to feel like you're suffering in silence. You are a member of the fatherhood clan, the fatherhood club. You're awesome.
Yeah, and one of the things about that too, Mark, is guys, it's a little bit different because most guys aren't going to open up and talk about how they feel as a father and stuff like this and deal with stuff, but they will listen to these conversations. And I get hit up by hundreds of these dads that are like, man, I feel exactly like you do, and it's overwhelming how many, there's dads that are hitting me up from Australia, from England, and they agree with the message. And they're not someone that would ever call into a show or come on a show and say how they feel, but they'll sit there and listen to a conversation, especially when you have some of these heavy hitters on that carry a big weight with them.
Yeah, it was amazing to me when I became a father and I started looking for fatherhood resources, dad resources. Everything was geared towards women and towards moms. There was very little out there that was inspired you to be a better father because, like you said earlier, there are different roles, right? I mean, your gender doesn't. I don't think that your gender has a direct correlation with your ability to be a good parent or your importance in your child's life. So I have a ton of respect for what you're doing, and it's just a really good program, man. Really love it. Really like it.
I appreciate that, Mark.
So one of the things I noted in your podcast was you had first started out doing a lot of solo stuff, and then you ended up segueing into interviewing some of these amazing people. How were you able to make that jump into interviewing big time people like your Deon Sanders and your Kurt Warner type characters? How did you make that jump?
Yeah, well, the first guy that came on that had a big name was Dean Cain. When he came on, that was on episode 47. Now, I had a couple of other guests leading up, but what I did was I just leveled up from each guest that I had. The first guy I had on was Eric Snow. He's the founder of what's called the Watchdogs, Fathers of Great Students, down in like Alabama or somewhere down south. And he came on. So I kind of used that interview and that experience to go to the next guest, the next level up. And I just started building that way. And my mindset, which is just from everything, like I said, I read a ton of Navy SEAL books. I'm big into philosophy. I'm big into believing in what you're doing here. I'm a very faith-based person, and I believe that whatsoever you ask for in prayer, if you believe you have received it, it will be yours. So I never doubted for a minute that dads would want to come on my show and agree and share this message. I never doubted it, because if I did, it would never happen. So I believed in what I was saying, and before I knew it, I had guys like Dean Cain on. That led me, he tweeted it on his thing when he came on. We had a great conversation, a great rapport with one another. He really liked being on the show, and he put it on his Twitter and Instagram. And then it started to skyrocket a little bit up in the ratings. And then I forget who was the next big name, but sooner after that, I had a few of these Navy SEALs on for like Memorial Day week. I think I had Jason Redman and Kevin Lace, and then I had Rob O'Neill come on, the guy that killed bin Laden. So that was another one that really spiked it up in the ratings when he tweeted it out and when he put it on his Instagram. So each guest, they bring their own audience with them when they come on the show. And especially if they're putting it out there on social media, it just grows and grows. And then when you try to approach another guest and you could say, hey, look, I've had Dean Cain on the show. I've had Deon Sanders or Kurt Warner or Morton Anderson. Then they're saying, oh, okay, well, I'll come on. It gives them more of an enticement to want to be on the show. So that has, of course, helped me out a great deal.
Sure. Networking, community, these are things that I think can be easily overlooked. As fathers, being part of a community and as part of the podcast community, I think that knowing people and getting involved is really important. And I also think that when you're speaking your truth, like when you're speaking your mind and it's coming from a good place, from a truthful place, people have a lot of respect for that, especially in the age of social media where most everything is photoshopped and fake, right? So when you hear dads speaking the truth, when you're with someone that's real, I think that resonates with your guests, right?
Yeah, and you know what too, Mark. I never had a social media account until I started the podcast last year, so I wasn't into all that, Finstagrams and fake accounts and all this stuff. I just, spoke from my heart, and I just talked about a message that I really believed in, that I spoke about every weekend as I'm driving the car around. So yeah, I really just delivered the message that I believed in. And another thing too, about getting the guests. Once you start getting these fractions or these ratios of people coming on, like I would reach out to, like, say, for every 10 guests that I reach out on, I'll get one that'll come on the show. So I know that I got to get either 9 rejections or 9 people that aren't going to respond to me. So when I do get those rejection letters in, I get excited because I know I'm that much closer to getting another guest. And it's just the way that I look at it. And I think that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will start to change. And that's what's happened to me as far as my confidence with getting the guests on the show.
I think that's a really powerful point of view to take on. I mean, look, I think that's a powerful point of view, not just for what you're doing in the podcast realm, but also as a father, right? Because for every 9 mistakes that you make, you get that one right, and you're like, yes,
Yeah,
my
that's what it's
son
all
did what I
about.
asked him.
Yeah, and you got to celebrate your victories when they come, because sometimes they're few and far between. So when you get them, you got to remember to be happy when they come in.
100%. Do your kids, speaking of your kids, do they listen to your podcast also? Do they get into it? Do they enjoy the show?
I've had them on the show, all but my middle guy. He's destroying me because of that. But I'm going to bring him on for his birthday. But no, they listen, like when I'm taking them to school. If I want to double check the monologue to make sure that it sounds good in the morning, like they'll listen in, but not too much. I mean, it's really basically geared towards dad. Sometimes if I have something that's specially geared towards one of the things, like I just recently took my daughter to see Frozen on Broadway for a little daddy-daughter date. And I actually interviewed one of the guys that plays in the show, Robert Creighton, on the podcast. So he was able to bring us backstage, on the stage. It was a wonderful time, as it turned out to be. But things like that, I'll let them listen in on when I recap things that I do with the kids, But as far as like on a day-to-day basis, not necessarily.
Wow, now that's first class fatherhood right there. Bringing your daughter to see Anna and Elsa backstage. Props to you, man. That's what's up.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'll tell you what was funny about that. When I was at the show and during the intermission, we went to use the restrooms. And while we were online, my daughter wore a nice Elsa dress that lights up and plays music and all that. So we were waiting online, and this woman goes, "Hey, I love your daughter's dress. Where did you get it?" "Oh, wait, I should be asking her mother." And then she laughed. And I was saying, "Well, no, dads buy clothes for their children too. I got this at Target, So it was one of those moments where they have this stereotype in their mind of whether she had a bad experience with her father or her husband is lazy or whatever it may be. They target all fathers in that way, and that's not the truth. I bought the dress for her, and I was like, that's part of what I'm talking about on the show here, So I also slipped in one of my cards and said, "Hey, take a listen to the podcast. You always got to be selling."
That's right. That's right. And just the more people to know, man. Wow, that's really powerful. There are definitely a lot of stereotypes out there. It's definitely something that it impacts a lot of fathers in a negative way because you put out so much effort. I don't know. It's just like you're always putting out this effort and not get that respect back from people. It can be disheartening. But I think the reality is, like you said, is you just celebrate the victories. You celebrate the good times, man. It's all about just celebrating. I have a pretty decently sized dad group on Facebook, right? We just hit 500 mark today, and every 100 members we do a big dance party, and it's nothing serious. Like it's a little goofy, but you just got to celebrate. You got to enjoy life, man.
What are you doing, that Fortnite dance, Mark, or what?
No, I can't do the Fortnite dance. I just do some bad like 90s breakdancing moves. My daughter's in ballet class, so I just kind of let her lead, right? Although as a 3-year-old, she's not exactly throwing intense moves, but it is all good. So another really cool thing that I saw on your show or listened to on your show was you got a chance to go backstage at the Super Bowl, right? Or you got to go to the press day at the Super Bowl. What was that like, man?
Yeah, that was crazy. I had filed or filled out my application for a media pass after it closed. The registration had already closed for it too, but I wrote a nice letter and all that stuff. But anyway, the media day was on Monday, and I had never told my wife about this. And Sunday night at 1 o'clock in the morning, which was Monday morning, 1 a.m., I get an email from the Super Bowl committee saying, "Your media pass has been approved. You can come pick it up at the Atlanta Georgia Dome or Convention Center, wherever it was." And so I was like, wow. So I woke my wife up at like 1:30. She had to go to work in the morning. The kids got school the next day and sports and everything else. And I said, "Listen, I think I got to hop on a flight and go down to Atlanta." She's like, what the hell are you talking about? You know? And I'm like, well, I filled out this thing for the Super Bowl for media day and they just approved me. So I had to scramble around that day and get a flight because I wasn't going to miss the opportunity no matter what. So I hopped on a flight and went down there, and I was there for media day. I got a chance to interview Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Julian Edelman, and some of the Rams players. And what a wonderful experience. It was a great learning experience for me too, because I was definitely an amateur amongst professionals at that event. So I definitely I learned a lot from being there.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, part of this whole process of learning new things is that you got to get uncomfortable. You got to make mistakes in order to get better, right? And that's what's kind of cool about it. I got a lot of respect that you were able to actually make that happen. I don't think a lot of people would even thought to apply for a Super Bowl pass. That's really, really cool. Did you get to actually watch the game?
No, you know what? Because the media day was on Monday. Now, I could have extended my stay, and some of the guys that I met up with said, hey, we can get you in with our group to come. But I wasn't going to leave my wife here hanging for another 6 days alone with work, with the kids, so, and I'm not really anymore that big into football, to be honest with you. So I was like, you know what? It's not really that big a deal. The main point of me doing this was for the podcast, for this day, and it's the only day I'm going to have a chance to speak to the players, and that was my main focus. So I took a flight out of there a little bit after midnight Monday night, which was Tuesday morning. So it was a quick hop. I went down, banged it out, and came back. That was it.
Solid. I mean, not to mention you're from New Jersey, so you're probably not exactly a New England Patriots fan, right? You're all
Yeah,
over.
no. But it was, I'll tell you what, it was very awesome to get a chance to meet Tom Brady and speak to him, ask him some questions about fatherhood and some of the other guys too. I mean, they were really all very friendly. It's media day. Everybody's in a good mood. So it was definitely an experience that I'll remember forever. And it was definitely a learning one for sure.
Absolutely. So if someone is just tuning in to First Class Fatherhood for the first time, what would be the episode that you would recommend they listen to first? What to you is the episode that you got the most out of?
Man, there's been so many good ones. And a lot of times what will happen is like I'll have like high caliber guests on the show and I'm like all geared up for it. And it'll be the ones where it's like a guy that I was thinking, this is just another interview to bang out and it'll really knock me off my feet. One of those was Jeff Utsch. And this is a guy that is he's been swimming his whole life. And he's the guy that's been teaching the Navy SEALs how to swim for over 20 years. He's the guy that they go to learn all these strokes and all these other stuff. And his interview really just blew me away. His mindset, the way he brought his kids up. One of the rules in his house was, I believe he had 4 children. I'm not sure, but one of the rules that he had was you had to learn a language and you had to play an instrument. And I thought that was pretty good. And you had to play a sport. So he kind of made it was up to them to pick which ones to do, but they all had to pick one. And I thought that was a pretty good philosophy and just very well spoken about fatherhood. He's a seasoned father. He's been around a ton of these Navy SEALs for his whole life. Just a wonderful philosophy. So I would check that one out. Jeff Utsch. I forget which number it was. I think it was like 92 or 93, somewhere along there. But another one, too, is The Entrepreneurs. Ed Milet was very, very good. He gave out some wonderful tips for dads as far as using the technology with their kids. He had some really good points to make on there. Mostly all the entrepreneurs do. David Meltzer was another one that was really good, very well spoken. Brad Meltzer, the author, he was good. I mean, it's hard to pick from and lock it in. I mean, Ryan Mickler was really good. Sean Whalen was very good. I mean, all these guys, they all have their own little finesse of discipline, their own little style of communicating with their children and how it's changed their perspective on life. So you can really just throw a dart at the archives and hit an episode. You're going to pick up a little bit of something from it.
That's awesome, dude. I mean, it's so cool how many people you've spoken to and how many people you're going to speak to. So I'm really excited to see what is coming next. So I guess the question I need to ask you, and the number one question that I get from dads that I'm reaching out to and speaking with is, how do you have time to balance all this? Because you're a father, you've got like being a father in of itself is a full-time job, right? So how do you balance it? How do you balance all these interviews, the social media, side jobs, the Uber with being a father? How do you balance it all?
Yeah, and you know what? Kurt Warner spoke really well on this because I asked these guys that, like, how do they balance it being a high-level athlete like this while being a father? Kurt Warner said, you can't give equal time to everybody. You can't give your wife an hour, the kid an hour, the job an hour. Everybody can't get equal amount of time. But the amount of time that you do get to spend, you got to be 100% focused and there where you are. And I think a lot of us are so pulled back by either the past or we're so busy looking forward into the future that we're not paying attention to the present moment that we're in. And especially a lot of times we'll be at the job in our mind is on the podcast or it's at home. And when we're at home, our mind is at the job or it's somewhere else. And I think if you just eliminate that, the illusion of time really starts to evaporate for you, because if you just stay focused on what you're doing, if I'm driving Uber, I'm driving Uber. I'm not podcasting. I'm not parenting. I'm not husbanding. I'm not doing my regular job. I'm just driving Uber, and I focus just on that and each customer that comes into the car. And that's where my 100% focus is. And I think just by doing that, it creates this illusion that you have more time and you can get more things done during the day. It's just really all about focus, you know?
Being in the present,
Yeah.
being in the present, 100%. And it's so hard nowadays, I think harder than any other time in history, because you've got so many things bleeping and blipping at you all the time. Your phone has been like thousands and thousands, millions of hours of psychological studies have gone into your phone to get your attention. So we're just going through a really unique time for fathers. That's something that I think about a lot, is how to be more present, how to be more focused on what's actually in front of you. It's really challenging.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge for all of us, Mark. We especially with the technology, like you said, we're constantly looking at the phone. I use it to my advantage. I try to turn it all into a positive for myself. I use the phone, number one, for Uber. I do everything for my podcast. I only use my iPhone for everything. So it's brought me that, where now I'm making income with the podcast. So I try to use it as a tool in order to work for me instead of me working for the tool. I don't waste time really browsing on there or anything. If I'm not on there for a particular reason, either trying to hunt down a guest or trying to edit my podcast, then I try to avoid it, because that's enough time in itself to be on there. But audiobooks is another thing that I love with the phone. Whenever I'm driving Uber, if I'm driving the car for 8 hours a night, I always got an audiobook going in my ear. And I'm a ferocious reader. I'd like to knock out at least a book a week. So a lot of times I'll read the book and then hit the audio on the weekend, you know?
To me, that's a huge tip. Podcast, audiobook. It's more educational than just listening to music. You're multitasking in a way, because you can still focus on your job, but you're also getting that benefit of knowledge and education at the same time.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, Alec, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. This has been a really fun conversation. I feel like I could just go on for another hour with you, but I want to be respectful of your time as well. Before we close out, I just want to ask you, what tip would you have for a new father, someone who's just becoming a father? What would be the number one tip that you would give a new father?
I would say don't listen to what other dads or other men are trying to tell you about it when they say, I think who it was, Sergeant Lohman, just on the show too, that spoke about this. But don't listen to the guys who are saying, oh, just wait until you get the kid home from the hospital. Or then, oh, just wait until they start teething. Or, oh, yeah, just wait until they start this and that. Don't listen to that nonsense. The experiences are going to come, and they're going to be the greatest experiences of your life. They're going to go quickly. And now I'm on child number 4, and it's already going very quick. So I'm trying to hold on to the moments as they come. And it has been the greatest experience of my life. It has changed my life around, all for the positive. And I can't wait to have grandkids, because I love having kids around. So for me, they've been a blessing in my life. They've made me want to be a better man, be a better husband. And just overall, it's just been the greatest experience of my life. So just get ready. It's going to be like Christmas morning for you when you first become a dad. So, and I know that the late nights, everybody talks about, you're going to be up all night, sleep deprivation, all this stuff. If you change the way you look at it, what you're looking at will start to change too. So if you look at it as time to spend with the child, you put on one of your favorite movies, get a pot of coffee going, and make the best of it. Try to make the best of each situation, because there's some good in all of it.
It's very easy to get caught up in the future and in the past, but man, if you blink, you're going to miss the present. You got to stay in the moment, man. That's great. That's great advice, everyone. Got to listen to what Alec is saying here. Alec Lace, man, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I think you brought a lot of knowledge. I love what you're doing with First Class Fatherhood. All those awesome dads that you're interviewing, just amazing. I really can't wait to hear what's coming up next. Can you give us any spoilers? Anyone else you got in the pipeline here?
Not really, because I'm still working on. Listen, I do this on a week-to-week basis here too, so I got a couple of things lined up, but I don't announce them until I do the interview with them, because I've made that mistake. I've done that before, where I've announced the guest and then I've lost them. So just as far as tomorrow, I'm putting out the one with Jalen Moore. He played in 6 on the History Channel, so he played a Navy SEAL. And then Friday, I'll have another Navy SEAL on for Frogman Friday. It'll be Chris McKinley this week. I got another Frogman lined up for next week. I don't really want to get into that yet, but Yeah, I got another full week, another 5-banger coming at them next week. So stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram at Alec_Lace. That's where you'll find out all the guest announcements coming up.
Love it. Love it, Alec. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone, definitely check out Alec Lace and First Class Fatherhood. Telling you, there's some awesome content there. You're definitely appreciating. You're 5 days a week too, right, man?
Yeah, I'm knocking them out, Mark. I'm
5
doing
days.
5 a week. Yep.
Awesome, man. Respect. That's a lot. That's a lot of work, and I definitely appreciate what you're doing for fathers, man. Because just to bring it back full circle, fathers are heroes. We are the heroes of households. We are not second-rate parents. We are the heroes of the household, man. So what you're doing, I got a lot of respect for, man. Really love it.
Thanks a lot, Mark. I appreciate that. It was an honor to be on your show here today.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. We'll talk to you very soon, and keep doing what you're doing. I'll be in touch, brother.
You got it. Thank you.
Peace.